Robert Degre is Catholic and hearing the call to religious life, but, and that's our topic, this is Internose. Robert Degre, I have to ask you this question because we're all different when it comes to our call, but have you always felt this call to religious life?
So I have to say yes and no. Now, back in like kindergarten, first grade, we would do those.
Can you remember back that far?
Somewhat, not too clearly, but a little bit. We would do those, what do you want to be when you grow up, little surveys. And of course the answers are all over the place. There were professional baseball players, for ballerinas, doctors, etc. Astronaut. One kid wanted to be a puppy, which is a little different. Yeah. And my mom is always fond of saying that I had three things that I wanted to be. The first, professional baseball player. Who doesn't? Okay. The second was I wanted to serve in the military. And the third thing that I wanted to be was a priest. Now, that means it was kind of floating around in the back of my mind, so I'll say yes and that I've been considering it. However, discerning the vocation from the religious life in particular and really didn't begin until my time in college.
So you were telling me that you have an attraction to the life, the work, the ministry of the Dominicans. But it's the habit, isn't it? Isn't it really the habit?
I mean, it looks great. I can't deny that.
They do. They do look spectacular. But the Dominicans, why the Dominicans? What called you to think, even to begin to think about being a Dominican someday, if that's what God wants?
Absolutely. During my time in college, I actually attended Providence College, which is run and administrated by the Dominican Friars of the province of St. Joseph. And so right there was an introduction to the order. Of course, I did do due diligence. I looked around a little bit before kind of committing and discerning fully and then applying. But from the very beginning, there was kind of that element of the common life, which originally drew me towards the military, that sense of fraternity, that brotherhood, and the example to kind of see it lived out on campus was really enjoyable, and really the chance to eat with and to pray with and all of those things with the friars was part of what drew me. Beyond that, I already had this experience of fraternity and brotherhood actually during my time in high school. I went to Zavarian Brothers High School here in Westwood.
Yes.
And one of our mottos was classmates for 4 years, brothers for life. And that kind of crucible that we had in high school that molded some of these really strong friendships. There are guys that I still talk to on a daily basis from my time in high school that I met freshman year that I know I'll be friends with for the rest of my life. And the chance to live that out more fully in the day-to-day is something that I really couldn't find myself.
Interesting. And of course, for us as diocesan priest, we don't have necessarily that full sense of fraternity, although we try to cultivate it among ourselves. But I can see how that would be an attraction. But when it comes to the Dominicans, the order of preachers, what is it really, like deep down, that is attractive to you, beyond just being with other friars?
So one of there are two mottos, so to speak, of the order. The first is veritas and truth. The second is to contemplate and to share the fruits of one's contemplation. And that's something that, well, I didn't recognize that I was doing it. Over time, the last 3 years in conversations with my spiritual director, I've begun to notice that implicitly I've kind of been living that charism and that motto out. There were even times where, let's say, I would go to class at 10 a.m., and then by noon at lunch or 5 o'clock at dinner, I'd be taking what I learned in that class, in that discussion, and either applying it to something maybe in a different class, to my own life, or even in conversations with a friend in kind of a ministry sort of role. So bringing the intellectual into the very practical.
So presuming that this is all going to happen and that this is indeed God's plan, as you think about the Dominicans and serving as a Dominican friar, what is it about their life, their charism, their fraternity, their ministry that is most attractive to you?
So it is that kind of concept of contemplating and sharing the fruits of contemplation is a big part of that.
Okay.
But it's primarily how it's lived out through the order's balance between active ministry and monastic prayer, contemplative prayer. So kind of finding the balance between the two, but also taking that time alone with the Lord or with the other friars in choir and with the Lord and then taking that out into the world in whatever way possible, be it small discussions with individuals, be it discussions that are kind of promoted and seen around different states, cities, countries, etc. And even beyond that, I find it really kind of culminates, for me at any rate, most fully in the sacrament of confession, where that is, yes, that's one of those moments where we can look around and see that there's so much hurt and so much pain in the world as a whole that needs to have God's grace and God's touch within it. And through the ministry of the priest, there's healing and there's forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And it's also one of those moments where that conversation can be had, where someone comes and says, I've done wrong, I am sorry, this is what it is specifically. There's a time for guidance, there's a time for that prayer to turn into ministry, and then there's forgiveness, there's purification, and then there's a going forth.
Well, you don't have to sell me on that one.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm a firm believer in the frequent use of the sacrament of reconciliation, confession. But now you're standing here talking to me on Internos, dressed in a suit and tie. I got to ask you, what's stopping you from entering right now? What's the big deal?
So really, to put it simply, it's debt. And more importantly than that, it's student loan debt in particular. I spent 4 wonderful, wonderful years at Providence College. It was one of those things that really influenced my vocation and brought it to its fruition, so to speak, in terms of connecting with the order, beginning that discernment process, finding a spiritual director, and even my application. But in doing so, I had to take out loans so that I could attend the school and to graduate. Now, thanks be to God, the orders currently has 67 young men in formation. But because of that, they can't handle any student loan debt right now.
We're going to take a quick break, but I just want to talk to you a little bit, if you don't mind, about this whole issue of student loan debt, because it's got to be something that extends beyond you. So if you don't mind, after the break we can unpack this a little bit, as they say.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So it's debt that's preventing you from giving the Dominicans a shot. But it's not just you. I mean, isn't student loan debt an issue with a number of young men and women?
Absolutely. And it's actually interesting that this isn't even the first time in the church's history that debt has been an issue. A good example of this is actually St. Catherine Labouré herself. She wanted to enter the convent, but the convent asked for a dowry to kind of support her in the mission of the convent, which her parents refused to pay. So she had to seek support. She eventually got it from her brother-in-law before she was even able to enter. And so in a similar way, I guess you could say educational debt's part of our current dowry. Mm-hmm. But so it's not just me. There's actually approximately 42% of young men and women who are hoping to either enter religious orders, dioceses, so on, that are being prevented from applying or entering because of that.
I carried my debt into my priesthood, and I think after 5 or 6 years, with the help of a generous person, I was able to have it taken care of, and it was a tremendous relief off of my shoulders. But luckily, it didn't prevent me from entering the seminary. But your debt is preventing you and others too. So what are you doing about it?
So I'm really working on 2 specific things right now. The first is I'm working here in Boston for 2 parishes, and I'm running faith formation, RCIA, confirmation classes, parish Bible studies, and that's my full-time job.
And enjoying it too.
I am having a blast doing it.
Good.
And most of, if not all of my paycheck from that is going into my student loans to try and pay that down as quickly as possible, minus gas and a few other minor expenses. The second thing that I'm doing is actually at the behest, I should say, enthusiastic behest of my vocations director, I've been working with the Labouré Society.
The Labouré Society?
Yes.
What's that?
So, named after St. Catherine Labouré because she was in that similar position.
As you said.
It's an organization, it's a Catholic nonprofit organization that works with young men and young women in a class-type program that works on encouraging biblically based fundraising efforts, providing spiritual support, and helping us to enter formation as quickly as possible.
If I want to check out this Labouré Society, is there a website? There has to be.
Yes, it's www.laboresociety.org.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
Labouré Society.org. Now, you had mentioned to me once that you were involved in a class program.
Yes.
How does that work?
So the classes run for 6 months. And at the very beginning, they call us aspirants because we're aspiring to religious vocations. We meet in St. Paul, Minnesota for a training weekend. And during the course of that weekend, we learn everything from some basic kind of fundraising stratagems, techniques, things like that, to time management and a lot more, as well as engaging in kind of this sense of community, this sense of fraternity, and really getting to know one another, as well as the Labouré staff, and all the volunteers that they have on hand who work with us one-on-one as kind of partners in this process.
How long has the Labouré Society been in existence?
It's been in existence for about 15 years at this point. It started around 2003, 2004.
It's relatively new.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, because others might have the same question, obviously this is a well-organized effort to help people like yourself and other young men and women. Where does the Labouré Society get its money, its funding?
So there are really two pools in terms of funding. The first is more the organizational pool, so what runs the day-to-day of the organization. Yeah. And there are 2 out of the 7 staff members that really do that fundraising efforts. So all of that money is in its own separate, distinct pool. The second pool is the aspirants pool. And for each class, all of us, in my class in particular, there are 14 young men and women for various communities and dioceses across the entire country, from here in Boston all the way up to San Bernardino, California.
Amazing.
That fundraise. We ask for contributions from friends, family, those that we know and those that we're introduced to, and that money goes 100% towards helping us enter formation as quickly as possible.
So you've learned a lot, and you're hopefully making some efforts, and some significant ones, to reduce that debt so the day can come you can actually enter the Dominicans. How has, specifically, at this point in time, how has the Labouré Society helped you, Robert Degre?
In so many ways, really. I would say one of the first things that sticks out to me is time management. Beyond everything else, that's what they stress the most, because we're all currently working full-time jobs.
Sure.
And adding fundraising on top of that can be a real burden, especially when you're trying to maintain a spiritual life and a life of prayer. So that is one thing that I've been really forced to sit down, consider, plan my weeks insofar as that. Beyond that, just this concept of taking this kind of very personal vocation story of mine, bringing it into the public eye, and having personal conversations about the way God's working in my life, as well as the way God's been working in other people's lives, has been helpful beyond imagine.
Has this been a conversation at all in your parish work, with some of the young people or the staff with whom you work or collaborate?
Absolutely. So my pastor's been very on board. We've discussed it kind of somewhat frequently, as well as with the parochial vicar.
Nice.
I've talked with a couple of the kids about vocations and the confirmation program. I don't know if anybody's quite ready to make that jump yet, but there were a few kids asking how to become popes, so I think they're thinking long term.
Wow, that's really stretching it, but
a little bit.
Hey, listen, you got to think ahead.
Exactly.
And speaking of that, I would love to talk about your future, and I know that has something to do with the Dominicans. We all know that now, and also the future of the Labouré Society and what it can provide to help those young men and women who come looking for assistance with the same kind of issues that you're dealing with and the same kind of dreams that you have. But we're just going to take a quick break and come back and talk about the future. So the website for the Labouré Society is very simple. It's laboresociety.org, all kinds of resources and support for young people who are called to religious life or the priesthood, but yet have student debt. But I have to ask you, when, God willing, you enter the Dominicans, do you think that this experience of working with the Labouré Society is going to have a lasting impact?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, is the Dominicans are a mendicant order. So this concept of living in poverty and asking for assistance really in the day-to-day and operating the parishes and even providing food for the parish priests and things like that is going to be a part of that lifestyle. So getting a head start never hurt anybody. Beyond that, this time management concept, the life of a friar, as I've already spoken about a little bit, is this balance between active ministry and monastic prayer.
Sure.
Now, currently I don't have scheduled hours of prayer the way they do in the priories, but with that, in the future, with those scheduled hours, the active ministry is going to have to be the part that I'm going to have to manage more effectively to make sure I'm not missing anything.
And some of these very specific skills that you are picking up as a part of your class, and the great gift that is the Labouré Society to you, do you think these are going to help you in whatever particular ministry you might be involved in as a Dominican? The very specific skills that you've learned.
Absolutely. In terms of ministry in general, no matter what it may be, really the ability to kind of have that conversation about something that's could be an awkward topic, finances typically are, and even the way in which God's been working in my life and in the life of the other, those are nitty-gritty, sometimes awkward, sometimes tense topics. And the sooner I can get very comfortable with doing so, the greater work God's going to be able to do in those conversations in the future.
What's the greatest blessing that has come to you in being part of your Labouré class and interacting with these other young men and women?
It would really have to be just that interaction with the other people involved in this process. The other aspirants, men and women from around the country, from the Diocese of Lincoln, the Diocese of San Bernardino, the Diocese of Philadelphia, and many others, that we just got time at the end of each day to sit down, grab a quick bite, there are always cookies or something put out for us, and talk, and to learn more about how each person got to that table, basically. Some were converts, some reverted back to the faith after a long time away, some had kind of known this was going to be a path for them, but wanted to go to school first to make sure. And so in many cases, those relationships I feel are one of the most important. Beyond that, getting to know the Labouré staff who have been doing this for many years and have seen, at this point, almost 300 men and women go through this program and enter formation has been an unbelievable kind of experience. And even going a step beyond that, the people I've been talking to, they're friends and family members of mine that I've known since first grade or even before that I've never had these conversations with, that I'm now kind of opening that door to get to know a little bit more about them and to share a bit more about me in a way that we haven't done.
You know, in our parishes, we are often praying for an increase of vocations to the priesthood and religious life, but it's great to meet you, an individual who has felt the call, experienced the call to religious life, particularly as a Dominican, and to know that there are enough others out there that there needs to exist some support, particularly when young people are struggling with student loans. And so if I were, say, in your shoes, and I was part of your class, or even before that, and I went to the website, laboresociety.org, what kind of resources and help would I find there?
So there's a bunch of different things on the website itself. The easiest way to kind of get some of those support for a young man or woman who's discerning would be simply to just fill out and send them an email. At the bottom of the main homepage, there's contact me, first name, last name, email address, and then why you'd like to be contacted. Is it because you're discerning vocation? Is it because you would like to be a benefactor and to contribute either to support the mission of the organization or the current class?
Robert Degre, it's been a great opportunity for all of us to have a chance to meet you, to hear your story, particularly to hear about your call to religious life to the Dominicans. And I'm grateful to know now, with all of my friends out here in TV land, that there is something like Labouré Society to help young men and women who feel the call but yet have the burden of student debt. Thank you so much for sharing all this great information with us, and may God bless you as you move toward that great day when you become a Dominican friar. Know that we're all praying for you.
Thank you very much, Bishop. I appreciate it.